geeks! As per usual, Donald Trump has taken over our news cycle with his third indictment this year, this time for election interference. After his second indictment for mishandling classified information, he said that even if he's found guilty and convicted, he'll still run for office. Really, dude? How would that work? I am innocent. This is a witch hunt. I just wear orange because it's my favorite color. I have so many friends here, and they know I'm the real president and not crooked Joe Biden, or Ron DeSanctimonious, or sloppy Chris Christie, or Nikki Halestorm. This is a collect call from the Florida State Prison, and no one has accepted your call. Please hang up and try again. Domestic news next year is gonna suck. This week we're going all over the world. We're talking the coup in Niger, the Senate hearing on UFOs, escalation in Ukraine and Russia, an American nurse was abducted in Haiti, and we're featuring a Bolivian indigenous rights activist and lawmaker. Before we start though, please hit the subscribe button below, click the notification bell, and like this video. The democratically elected president of Niger, Mohamed Bazoum, was overthrown last week by the military and specifically his commander of the presidential guard. This guy was apparently about to get fired, but instead he was like, "You're not firing me," and he declared himself president of the country and suspended the constitution. This is the latest in a string of military coups in West Africa, including in Mali and Burkina Faso. So what's the deal? President Bazoum was elected in 2021 in Niger's first peaceful democratic transition of power since it became independent from France in 1960. In fact, Secretary Blinken visited Niger only a few months ago and said it was a model of democracy, resilience, and cooperation. You may have spoken a bit too soon there, bud. The US has a military base there with over 1,000 troops who help fight Islamic insurgents and train local soldiers to combat and prevent terrorism. Now, the reaction to this coup has been interesting and swift. The Economic Community of West African States, also known as ECOWAS, which is a bloc of 15 West African countries, sanctioned the military officials in the coup, imposed a no-fly zone, and suspended all commercial and financial transactions with Niger. They also gave the military 1 week to restore things back to normal and threatened the use of force if they don't. Whoa. And now the coup leaders of Mali and Burkina Faso say that if ECOWAS makes good on their threat, then they'll join the fight against ECOWAS. So now this story could turn into a regional war in a resource-rich area that has a growing Islamic insurgent problem. A rush of diplomatic talks have taken place, and the US said Niger will lose military assistance if the military doesn't step down. But I don't expect these guys to go easily, which means that democracy and counterterrorism efforts aren't looking good for that corner of the world. Okay, buckle up for this one since we're about to talk alien. Last week, the House Oversight Subcommittee held a hearing on UFOs, which are also called unidentified aerial phenomena. And during this hearing, 3 former military intelligence officers told Congress that the government knows a lot more about UFOs than what's publicly disclosed. One guy in particular, named David Grusch, who worked as an intelligence officer for 14 years in the Air Force's National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, said there was a multi-decade program that worked to collect and reconstruct UFOs that had crashed. He even said he had colleagues who were injured by these UFOs, and when he was asked whether the Pentagon had recovered non-human biologics from them, he said yes. What? It's no big deal. By the way, when members were asking these questions, they acted like all this was totally normal. So were the remains taken by the Pentagon human or non-human biologics? Non-human. Cool. So now a Pentagon official came out to say that this guy is making false claims and that this hearing was an insult. But the Biden administration is kind of distancing themselves from that Pentagon official, and reporters say that sources confirm what Grusch was saying. Bottom line here is that I want to know about the aliens. I mean the public. The American public deserves to know whether there are aliens. I asked you all if you believe in aliens, and 86% of you said yes. Whatever comes out of this hearing, the good news is that there'll likely be more transparency around these programs and more support for pilots who report seeing UFOs. We come in peace. Only we Americans would believe aliens speak English. Things between Ukraine and Russia have sharply escalated this week. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said that should Ukraine succeed in its counteroffensive and regain its territory, then Russia would have to use nuclear weapons, and that there simply wouldn't be any other solution. Yeah there is. How about not using nuclear weapons or stealing your neighbor's land? Now, as threatening as he sounds, this statement was also interesting because a senior Russian official was admitting that Russia might actually lose this war and highlighting that they might be thinking about contingency plans. I asked you all if you thought he was bluffing, and 62% 82% of you said yes. Russia has heavily intensified its attacks this week after Ukraine struck Moscow and Crimea last week. Ukrainian drones hit Moscow again this week, damaging a skyscraper in a business and shopping area of the city. And what Ukraine is trying to do here is send a message to Moscow that they too can hit them at their heart and cause instability inside Russia. This could complicate U.S. military assistance, though, because the U.S. and its partners have made it clear that they don't want to give military equipment to Ukraine that could expand the war inside Russian territory. Now, as things escalate, Saudi Arabia will be hosting Ukraine peace talks this weekend, which is interesting since the Middle East hasn't really isolated Russia and Russia is not invited to these talks. Ukraine has welcomed them, though, so we'll see if they yield anything fruitful. But if you ask me, this looks more like a move by the Saudi crown prince to position himself as a global leader.
I swear I love peace. Really.
An American nurse from New Hampshire named Alex Dorsainville and her child were abducted by gangs near Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. Alex is married to Sandro Dorsainville, who's the founder and director of a Christian ministry and humanitarian aid organization called El Roy Haiti. And she and her daughter were kidnapped when armed gunmen stormed El Roy's medical clinic where she was working. Witnesses say the gang is demanding $1 million for her release, and U.S. authorities are working to track her down. Her kidnapping shines a light on a major worsening problem in Haiti. Geek out with me. Over the past year, kidnapping for ransom has significantly increased across Haiti. In fact, over 1,000 kidnappings have been registered in Haiti just from January to June of this year alone. And since Haiti's prime minister was assassinated 2 years ago, gangs have proliferated and taken control over most of the country. In fact, there are over 200 gangs in Haiti, and 80% of the capital is firmly under gang control. Because of this violence, numerous charities have shut down operations there. In fact, Doctors Without Borders closed their doors in Haiti earlier this year when gunmen stormed their operating room and snatched a patient. 200 Haitians protested to call for Alex's release and have talked about the good that she and El Roy were doing for the community. The FBI and the State Department have previously negotiated the release of kidnapped Americans in Haiti, and so I'm hopeful for Alex's release. But I feel the need to highlight that the State Department has warned Americans not to travel there, so if you're thinking about it, I would advise postponing. In the meantime, the gang members that abducted Alex and her child, and frankly all the gangs there, are on my list this week. It's International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples, and so I wanted to share the story of Toribia Lero Quispe, who is an Indigenous activist in Bolivia. She's also a member of Bolivia's assembly and leader of the country's democratic opposition and overall badass. She's been an activist for Indigenous rights, women's rights, and democracy for over 30 years. In 2019, then President of Bolivia, Evo Morales, committed electoral fraud with the purpose of stealing the national election, and Toribia Lero Quispe was one of the elected representatives affected by this fraud. Morales ultimately resigned, but because she opposed his party and his authoritarian ways, she and her fellow democratic activists continued to face violence, intimidation, and legal persecution. Nevertheless, she persisted. Toribia Lero Quispe continues to expose the government's corruption and abuses, and she also works to end violence against women. In fact, thanks to her and her colleagues, Bolivia is the first country in the world to pass a standalone law against violence targeting women in politics. I think we need more Toribias in this world. Thanks, geeks! I have been reading and responding to some of your comments, and I cannot tell you how much they mean to me. Seriously, notes like yours keep the team and me going, and so when I say they mean the world, it's because they really, really do. So if you didn't already, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and drop a comment below so you can make my day. And don't forget to follow us across other social media platforms for additional geeky content. Stay fabulous, geeks.